Amy Schellekens, and I'm one of the attorneys with Sterk Family Law. Today I'm here with Mary Beth Walter, and we're going to talk about some tips for families and some supports for e-learning. Hi, Mary Beth. How are you?
I'm well. Amy, how are you?
Good. So here we are again, 2020, unprecedented times. We have school districts making the choice to switch to an e-learning for the fall, at least for some time in the fall. Our parents are getting nervous and getting concerned. Do you have any pointers for how to make this a little bit of an easier process for them?
Well, there are some thoughts, and, you and I have talked a little bit previously, but I think one of the most important things is you establish a time for e-learning, because it's very easy. It's like working from home, which it is. It can go from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. And as a person, I can't take it. As a child, I certainly don't want to do it. So I think it's important to establish the e-learning time. So if the school is saying 8 to 12, then you know. But before that, you don't start them at 6:30 to try to get the homework done, So I think a little bit of a structure, which is always easier on paper than implementing, because somebody will have lost a sock or something. But I think it's important also to remember that even though they're in the home and school is important, families are important as well. And I think you have to keep your sanity until we've come up with some answers to things that no one has yet. I would also, along with the family time, I would also get from the students' IEP team, how much time is expected from them for off camera or off e-learning or off instructional time. Because I think it's important. Sometimes students will rip through whatever they have to do in 20 minutes and even do it well. And then sometimes based on a number of factors, emotional, whatever, 2 hours later, you still can't get the 10th problem done. At what point, for everybody's sanity, do you say, okay, that's enough. I will email, I will do, but we have done what we can do within this time period. And I think that that's, one way to get some sanity to it. The other thing I think is, one of the deficits to me on e-learning is the loss of a sense of community. Yeah, you see other students on the screen, but is there a way to connect with other parents? Can the social worker set up a face group for the classroom so you can ask other parents or you can ask other students? And then it's a free choice. You can join or you cannot join. But it's, I think, an avenue that should be available to foster that sense of support among students and their guardians and or parents in the same classroom.
I think getting some small groups together too, not even maybe the whole class, but if you can break it down to a few kids maybe that live really near you, or at least within a decent range, where maybe you could even do something outside, at least for right now while the weather is still good, and make those connections. I have concerns about kids starting new schools, so they really don't have any pre-existing relationships with staff or with students. Like, that's going to be a really, really hard concept for them to make those relationships that are going to be there for next year when we're all done with this COVID-19 e-learning, hopefully.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think too, e-learning, what's difficult is, I think, is no one had conceptualized it quite this way in quite this manner, and the training for staff and students hadn't taken place. But this is kind of a baptism by fire. I think it's a good idea when you were talking about groups, especially for older students. Can they become a group within themselves, without parental oversight? Especially teenagers, they need that connectiveness with peer groups. And can that be facilitated by someone at the school? I don't see why not, if everyone has given their permission, and it would be, once again, voluntary. But I think those are important relationships to establish and maintain.
I kind of looked at it as like small study groups almost. Like, you know, obviously I'm an attorney, and in law school, everyone gets together into study groups and helps each other with their outlines. That's kind of the way I looked at it, was maybe having, you know, that connection to try to develop those study groups of at least a couple students to help each other out.
Yeah, no, and because we all have strengths and weaknesses. You
Right.
know, I mean, I do. And I also think it's important for caregivers, parents, guardians, the support team to forgive themselves. You know, it's, you know, there's always that Friday morning where nobody can find the right socks, or the breakfast on the day of pictures got worn on the front of the blouse kind of thing. And I think it's also important to put it in perspective, to forgive yourself and the child on those days when it just doesn't go anywhere right, you know? And
But as a parent, I said the same thing. There are days, even when we're going in person, that, you know what, maybe the hair wasn't quite right when I sent her out the door, or yet she tripped on the way to the bus and now she has a skin knee on the way to school. Things happen, and they're going to happen while we're e-learning, and they happen when we're going in person too. So having that mindset that that's not detrimental to everybody if something happens.
yeah, and I also think it's important for the parents and students to carve out a little bit of time for themselves. A lot of times it's not possible for long amounts of times, but if you can, take a breath away, push it back a little bit, and say, okay, I need a half hour where, for me, whether it's taking that bath in the bathtub or reading that book you never got to, something. So you can look back so it's separate. And I think that's also a big refresher.
I agree. I mean, I think my thought process has been boundaries. Like, that's my theme. Boundaries for when I'm going to be working, boundaries for when we're e-learning, and boundaries for when I need time away from it all. It's kind of our thing, is setting those expectations for everybody in the family of, this is when we're going to do this. Not saying we're perfect and we're going to follow that every day to a T, but kind of getting everyone on that same page so that we can try it, I think has been really helpful, and just kind of processing it that way.
Yeah, and I also think even physical boundaries. It's easy always to leave the Chromebook out, as it is easy for me when to leave the workout on the kitchen table and then you just kind of push it aside. But also physically say, okay, during this time, here's the dedicated space, if you can do it. But once it's gone, take the stuff away, put the stuff away, because you will, it just intrudes on too many parts of a family's life if you don't also put it, I think, some physical boundaries to it, you know?
There was a lot of people talking about, when COVID first started happening and offices were closing, about what they were doing to get their home offices set up so that they were comfortable working from home. I kind of look at it the same way for students. This is setting up their home office. And this isn't just our, we got very short notice, our schools are closed and we're going to have to do this the rest of the school year, but now we have a little bit more time, maybe not a lot, but a little bit more time to think and plan and get some space set up. I'm on a lot of parent Facebook groups. I've seen a lot of creative parents setting up spaces and using poster boards to create some boundaries for the student, and having, their schedules up on those poster boards. And I'm not very creative myself, but I thought a lot of these parents have done a lot of really unique things to get their students set up.
And I know we talked about it in another video, but I also think that if the school can facilitate within a class a parental support group. I know when my children were going to school, they'd come home with, I don't know what, I need something by tomorrow. So it was very comforting to call another parent and either say, did you get the same request? And I think it also connects to the larger community of which school is a part of, And I think possibly, once again, like you were saying, the Facebook, the social worker should be able to facilitate that, or at least help you get it started. And I think those are also some good supports because, yeah, we're all in this little island right now, but hopefully we'll get the bridges connected at some point, you know?
That's a great, the concept of a bridge is a really good metaphor for what we need to do is bridging. I've been saying actually we're bridging between in-person and e-learning and trying to cross over into that next step once we can safely do so. I think a bridge is something that maybe gives us all a little bit of hope that we're eventually going to get to the other side.
And I also, you know, it's something that we talked about, and it just occurred to me is someone available from the school that can be contacted when the student has a question on homework that you possibly can't answer. You know, after about, I mean, and I taught, but after about third grade, occasionally there'd come something where it took me a long time to work it back to figure out what they needed. Is there a help center, a resource, a time the student can ask that question? I mean,
yeah, like is the teacher accessible or someone else within the school, maybe a classroom assistant or something like that. And I think we talked a little bit, Mary Beth, in a first video, but I want to mention it here too, about for students with IEPs, making sure that the parents are in contact with their team, with whatever supports they're receiving, or, you know, the special education teacher, or whoever else might be able to help them when parents are feeling overwhelmed. I think the thing that I want parents to remember is that the school is still here for you. It doesn't mean that because they're working remotely that they're not there to help your student. I think most school districts right now are just as upset as we are that we're not going back in person. I think they want to be in the classroom too, and so they want to be a support for families as well.
you know, and that's a great point because I think sometimes, especially the way that it's delivered, sometimes special education or IEPs or 504s can be almost adversarial. But I think 99% of teachers and parents want what's best for the student and the student as well. We don't always agree on how to get there, but I think it's important, and I think that's a great point. Schools want to be helpful. Parents want their children to succeed, and students want to succeed. And so with a group effort, hopefully we'll get there.
I agree. Mary Beth, thank you so much for joining me today. If any of you out there have any questions that we might be able to help, please call us at the office. The number is 815-600-8950. And good luck with e-learning this year.
Bye-bye.